Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-Federalists, they did. They absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Novolis, your host. And this week, as promised before, we are having Joan Swirsky with us. And we're just so delighted to have her after getting some wires crossed last week and everybody enjoying a program rerun. But Joan, how you doing today?
I'm great, Tom. Thank you. I'm looking forward to May 1st when the whole country, I hope, will open up. Such crazy New Yorkers where I live.
Yeah. Well, so when Joan and I spoke the last time, we had just a fantastic time in engaging one another in conversation. And what I wanted to do this week is just kind of bring us back a little bit on this first segment, as Joan and I talked about before we started the program. And we're going to give her a chance to go again. You know, in this last week, folks, Joan has produced some more articles, and I know she's got a whole bunch all queued up. And both Kath and I are finding her as an awesome and engaging writer. So with that, Joan, why don't you just tell us about yourself? And there you are in New York. And how'd you get started in writing as you have?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Actually, I met my husband when we were both 14. And we got married as teenagers. We had 3 kids. I lived on the campus of his college. He went to Dartmouth. And in those years, it was a big ego trip because it was not co-ed, so they were whistling at trees. Mm-hmm. So when I showed up, it was a fun thing. And and then we moved to New York, and my husband and I got an opportunity to subscribe to a lecture series at which these very famous and prominent people were talking. And one of them was the Supreme Court Justice Abe Fortas at the time, and one of them was very prominent senators and congressmen, and one of them was a very prominent orator. You never hear that word because in the 20th century, there were only 2 great orators. Mm-hmm. One was Winston Churchill, yes, and the other one was Abba Eban, who was the foreign minister of Israel. Mm-hmm. And he was coming to speak, and there was standing room only, and they had a big screen. I think it was one of the first times I ever saw where they set a screen up outside the venue so people could come and hear. And when he finished speaking, it was a very dazzling, riveting speech. People were mesmerized, yes, by his language, by what he was saying. It was a very thrilling experience. And afterward, the host came to the microphone and said what Abba Eban was trying to say, and then he proceeded to paraphrase him. Well, it was so outrageous that he was going to paraphrase this great orator as if we stupid people in the audience didn't get it. It had to be translated for us.
Wait a minute, you were at Dartmouth. You know, how stupid could you be?
Well, I was. My husband was. Anyway, I went home, and with a paper and a pencil, I wrote a letter to our local newspaper describing this unpleasant experience and kind of castigating the man who presumed to try to translate this speech for us. Mm-hmm. It was basically a poison pen letter. Yeah. And it got published. And I got a big feedback from that. And I thought, whoa, this is an amazing experience. You express your opinion, you get a byline, and you get recognized. And that was no small thing in this community because I happen to live in an extremely, and I mean that in the literal sense of the word, an extremely left-wing community. Mm-hmm. I mean, I live in a community that actually has something called the Marxist Forum. Oh, yeah. Think about it, yeah. Marxist Forum. Crazy. Yeah. So anyway, it turned out that my letters, which I began writing regularly, the publisher of the newspaper, I once bumped into her on the street, and she said that she thanked me for boosting the circulation. because I was like the voice crying in the wilderness. That happens to be the motto of Dartmouth, Vox Clamante in Deserto, the voice crying in the wilderness. Because when you're a conservative in a liberal community, you're going to come out of the woodwork protesting what you have to say. So I happen to like that.
Yeah.
So that was how I got started writing, with a poison pen letter.
Wow. Yeah, and as we'll go through, and folks in the links on below and on the website at samueladamsreturns.net, you will see the link to Joan's page, and you'll be able to look at all her different articles there. But what was also interesting when I went through your bio, Joan, is that you're a playwright.
Well, I've written 4 musicals, and one of them was actually produced off Broadway in 1983. It was very, very thrilling and exciting. My son actually is a songwriter, a kind of a known songwriter. Did you ever hear the song "Tell It to My Heart"?
Yeah.
Well, he wrote that. He wrote for a lot of prominent people like Tina Turner and Michael Bolton, and oh my God, so many people. Al Green, Taylor Dane. So he was always wrote music since he was a little boy. He wrote the music to these musicals. And in fact, he got an ASCAP award for the musical that we presented off Broadway. And that was a very exciting thing. But it's a very complicated thing to produce a musical or to have it produced. So I still have 3 unrequited musicals. I've had readings, I've had little mini performances, but nothing like a real production, because it's very, very complicated on every level.
Oh, I'm sure.
But exciting, very exciting, and this is multifaceted. There's costumes, there's sets, there's music, it's just very thrilling.
Yeah. Wow.
But anything that takes writing, I like writing. I've written 12 books. 6 I collaborated on, and 6 I wrote by myself. Mostly, not mostly, but mostly health and science subjects. And one book I collaborated on was about a serial murderer on Long Island, a man who killed 17 women and was caught because his taillight was broken on his car. That's a very, very interesting case.
So with that... I wanted to ask you a little bit about the books, just to segue back a little bit on, you said on the medical side. You have a medical background. You're really eclectic in your educational background.
Well, after my children were in school and my daughter went to kindergarten, I decided to go to nursing school. And I just loved being a nurse. I was a delivery room nurse and an operating room nurse. For a few years. And then after that, I became a nurse psychotherapist. And I think the nursing background has helped me tremendously in some of the books I've written. I've written about breast cancer. I've written about lymphedema, which is a relatively unknown condition, even though it's extremely common. It's, for some reason, it's often misdiagnosed. It's after you have surgery for breast cancer or prostate cancer. Sometimes the vessels, the lymph vessels, are damaged, and then people have this tremendous swelling of their arms and their legs. And it's not fatal, but it's chronic, it's uncomfortable, and now it's a little better known. And I've written about childhood mental illness, and I've written about laser surgery, which is really very interesting, because even though it does amazing cosmetic things, it also does a lot of things like remove port wine stains. Babies who are born with these big, large port wine stains. That's the name of it. Purple blemishes, and other very amazing things, including removing tattoos. And the doctor I wrote this with told me that she has a booming business. If she only did removing tattoos, it would be because it's such a popular thing now, and then people have these massive regrets because they make a big heart with a name in it, and they break up with the person, and we got to get rid of the name. Right. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Kath said, and we're in our last 5 minutes here, but one of the articles that Kath read that she was very impressed with was what you did on sonograms and pregnant women.
Yeah.
So that
well,
was.
The thing is, thank you. I really appreciate that. That article ran not only basically all over the world on the internet, but in several local papers in New York, in Queens, New York, on Long Island. I'm interested in that subject because I was a delivery room nurse. And in the early 70s, two very major things happened in the practice of medicine, in the specialty of obstetrics. One of them was that the Lamaze method, which was started in France by a man named Fernand Lamaze, became very popular. And it basically ushered in men, husbands, and now partners into the delivery room. And I worked with the doctors at that time, and they didn't like that. They didn't like being watched. They thought they were being watched. So that was a major change in society and that's when people started saying, we're pregnant. You know, I thought when I got pregnant, I was pregnant, but then the vocabulary changed, and so the men also went into the delivery room. And the second major change was the introduction of sonograms to be able to visualize the fetus and the amount of fluid, amniotic fluid, and growth and all sorts of things. And what happened, and what made me interested in this subject, was when I stopped working in the delivery room, I went and I got certified to teach Lamaze classes, which I did for 22 years. And I did it out of my home. So in a way, I had my own laboratory. And what I saw in the 70s, when the sonograms came into being and to be used in obstetrics, most women had one sonogram. It was like, oh, this novel thing that we could actually have. They would take the picture of the sonogram of the fetus and hang it on their refrigerator. And they would say, look at my baby. Then in the 80s, all of a sudden, they didn't have one sonogram. Some people had, oh, yes, right when you were diagnosed as being pregnant, it could be 4 weeks gestation or 5 weeks gestation. They had a sonogram. Then another one at 8 weeks. Then another. All of a sudden, in the 80s, that one sonogram turned into 4 or 5 sonograms. And then in the 90s, they turned into such a routine test. And what people don't know about sonograms is sonar. These are sonar waves, the same waves that are used with naval ships. And these sonar waves can actually bend steel. And a lot of times when you read about these dolphins that have been beached or dead, whole groups of dolphins, and they attribute it to the sonar that's coming off these naval ships. And then we started to learn that there's a heat factor involved. And the most dramatic thing was that the incidence of autism, and you could chart it on a graph, started to go up almost simultaneous with the increased number of sonograms. Now, nobody, of course, likes to talk about that, and the New York Times won't even write about it because they're like mammography machines. They're such a massive, incalculable financial investment in this technology that to not use it would be unthinkable to the powers that be.
And we're coming down to I'm going to interrupt you a second. Joan, I'm going to interrupt because we're down to that last minute, and I want to carry over that because I think the real segue of that is not only your two things that are high on that profile is how to follow the money, where all the different investments are, and then as we come into what we're talking about and the things that are happening in real time in New York, my goodness, now, the one article you wrote on, pandemic or dem panic, I want to cover that a little bit as we get into the next segment. But, these are all the components that, as I've done a lot of investigation, people, as yourself, is that people are so unaware of what ends up captivating us and becoming normalized to the extent that it's actually damaging if somebody really pays attention to it. But the financial gains that are out there were overwhelming. And that's something that even our founders understood. Sam Adams wrote about it And quite frankly, those anti-federalists, they absolutely understood that in their writings as well. They were predictive. So we'll come back in the next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right. And again, this is Tom Navolis, your host. And guess what? You can get all of the programs and all of the archives at SamuelAdamsReturns.net. And check it out there. We're having today's programmings there as well. And most importantly, please go to Liberty Work Radio Network, LWRN.net, and look at all the other hosts and hostesses there and see just what that everyday programming is, as well as this program every Saturday at 3 different time slots that we're on. And you know what? There is that little thing over there, folks. It's called the donate button. This is a listener-funded network, and we appreciate everything that you do to help keep this programming on the air. So with that, I want to continue our conversation with Joan Swirsky. Joan, as she's been introducing herself, has a fabulous background. Joan, you're just amazing to interact with. I'm enjoying every time we talk. And where we left off in the last segment was that, follow the money. Having been in the Navy and having been on submarines and surface ships, I understand the functions of sonar as well as radar. But in this case, we're talking about sonar, which is all of that that's in sonograms. And the technology and how you saw it. And you made a real interesting link as we were finishing off, that not only talks about, and I think I want to, like we were talking at break, is focus on that follow the money, but the technology. And what did you see, that I cut you off with on what was happening, as women were getting more and more sonograms?
Well, as I said, I took these classes, so I actually spoke to the women. This wasn't like a random survey that I did where I questioned 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 or 50 women. I saw women for 22 years, and they would talk to me, and they would tell me about how they were doing and how they were feeling and the tests they were having and how many times they went to the doctor. So I knew that the sonogram testing increased significantly and dramatically. From the 70s, women would get 1 sonogram per pregnancy, and in the 80s, 4 or 5 or 6, and in the 90s, and certainly in the 2000s, it was just a routine thing practically every time they went. And I noticed, because just by reading, the incidence of autism was rising, and it seemed if you charted on a graph, the more sonograms a woman had seemed to correspond to the increase in autism. And then I thought to myself, wow, when are they're getting these sonograms in the earliest development of the fetus in the embryo, when the brain is just developing. Right. And here is there a correlation. So I got in touch with 2 researchers, one at the University of Pittsburgh and one at Yale University. And sure enough, they were researching just this association. Wow. I read about their work since then, although I did write the article just a few years ago. But I still think that it's worthy of research and that it probably won't be done because of the massive investment in technology that nobody is going to want to abandon or not use because of this theory. Right. But, it's something for people. There's a lot of people who should pick up the cudgel, and a lot of people have. There's authors that I cite in my article, and there's lecturers. There's a lot of people who are now taking up the call, but the real thing is to reach pregnant women and say, look, better safe than sorry. Right. If this is just not necessary, why get 12 sonograms before you needed 1?
Correct. Yeah.
And to generations like me, who didn't have a sonogram and didn't have an amniocentesis, they didn't even exist then. There's a whole generation who would say, I don't have any test.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that, as we were talking about with all of what you just said, all the embedded financial gains and all of that, that brings us to what we're dealing with right now. We have a whole nation that is shut down, and the longer people sit home and have the opportunity to investigate it, what we find is that, wait a minute, let's start following the money if you're willing to do that, which there are many that are. Yeah. And then you start questioning, okay, what are the relationships that Dr. Fauci has with other entities? What are the Bill Gates associations? What's happening there in New York? I mean, you guys, it's the center, and now finally I saw an article just a little while ago that now they're ordering the cleanup in the subways after how many weeks?
Well, we happen to have, we have a distinction in New York. California has the same distinction, and now I read Oregon, Michigan. There are a few far left states. Mm-hmm. And if you look at all of them, actually, I once read an article. I think it listed 20 major cities that were run by Democrats.
Yes.
And all of them have the same catastrophic problems, not minor problems. These are sanctuary cities. They're all broke. They all have horrific public education systems. And public education and bad education are not synonymous. You can get an excellent education in the public school, but unless it's run public school, when you talk about follow the money and their unions, it's a travesty.
Yes.
And that's New York. We have a particularly, I would say that it's a duo between the governor, Andrew Cuomo, and the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. I think they have to be exhibit number 1 and exhibit number 2 in any courtroom of the definition of a combination of incompetence and arrogance. That's a very bad combination.
Correct.
Because these are people who do terrible things and stupid things and destructive things and feel good about it. Yes. That's where the arrogance comes in. We have Andrew Cuomo, who's a crybaby. That's what he's famous for. We don't have enough masks. We don't have enough equipment. So, of course, he had an opportunity just a couple of years ago to order more than enough masks. But these lefties, what they do is they waste money on things like the hoax of climate change and other preposterous things, including, by the way, money going missing.
Yes.
Like what pocket does that? Bill de Blasio's wife was given I think $1.8 billion for some kind of mental health initiative. And guess what happened to the money?
Evaporated?
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
It's like John Forsythe. Remember when he was in New Jersey? I think he was the governor or the senator. Yeah. And all of a sudden, there was $6 billion missing, and Hillary Clinton, too.
Yes.
Where did the money go from the State Department? $6 billion. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
How do you lose money like that? What foundation does it go into? Whose pockets does it go into? What payoffs does it go into?
Right.
But there you have. So we have this governor. He's whining about nothing. So we send him a surplus of equipment.
Right.
I don't have enough beds. We send him a ship.
Yeah.
The Comfort, this massive naval ship. I never saw anything as beautiful, as decked out, as completely equipped. Well, it turns out he didn't need the ship. He didn't need the equipment. He had what he needed, but it's in a liberal mentality to put his hand out.
Yeah.
And if the government's giving, and now, by the way, there's something else about the liberal mentality. It's never enough. Right. That's the counterpart. Yeah. First, give me what you have, and then it's never enough. Yeah. And that's what he's saying now. Yeah. Meanwhile, he mismanaged things terribly He sent older people back to nursing homes that already had the coronavirus that was rampant, and they died.
Yes.
Then we find, and this goes right up to the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, that they're conflating the numbers of dead because hospitals get more money if you say that a patient died of the coronavirus, or even more money if they were on a ventilator.
Right.
So they're taking patients that die of pneumonia, die of heart, die of lungs, die of diabetes, die of everything else, and they're saying that they died of coronavirus. And even the CDC even admitted that.
Yeah. And this past week...
Talk about some for the money.
Yeah, and this past week, I'm sure you saw the article as well out of Pennsylvania where the coroners challenged those numbers, and they had to revise their numbers in Pennsylvania. So the question then becomes, as you're pointing out, across the U.S., and I know there were the two doctors in California that were challenging a lot of that as well, is how the reporting cycle has been going. We're seeing it all over because it's become, systemic. For every health director to ensure with the, as we've talked about, and probably we'll pick up because I think we're down to like 3 minutes, but just the whole idea that with the hospitals shutting down on all of their normal services in Ohio, they've already lost over $2 billion from doing the elective surgeries. So they got to make up that income somewhere. Otherwise, the whole healthcare system is going to collapse.
Well, it's a very crooked, corrupt system, and I would say most of it, not all of it, but most of it comes from the left. That's what they're good at. And, of course, the upcoming true, only, solitary, single, most important issue in the upcoming election is not the economy, it's not trade, it's not the virus, it's voter fraud.
Yes.
Because that's real. What Democrats specialize in with their Acorn, and now they changed the name of Acorn. It's still operating.
Yes.
But once they got indicted, once they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, but we see this all the time.
Right.
Where, oh my God, I just found 3 bags of votes. Isn't that amazing? And then we hear that George Soros owns a lot of voting machines, and so when you put in a Republican vote, comes out Democrat magically.
Yeah. We just had, because in Ohio, we have two things. So we have what I call a Republican for a governor, and my 92-year-old dad, he says he's always been a Democrat, but our health director is someone that was highly honored by the Obamas for all the work that she did in the campaign. So we're seeing her leading this governor by the nose, and I say that he has the little man syndrome in taking and being very much like Mussolini, but with all the protests that are happening, he's getting some good pushback by the citizenry here down in the Capitol in Columbus. But with that, we're down to our last minute and a half. I just kind of want to wrap that around, and what we're talking about, we're seeing is that from, again, the foundational mirrors and history perspective, is that the anti-federalists in particular were telling us to take and watch out for designing men, meaning the human race can design all these different things that would utilize our integral system, even within the context of the Constitution, that they would figure out ways to take and utilize it against the liberties and freedoms of the people. And we're just observing a lot of that. And then in another long article that I'm writing is that where de Tocqueville talked about people being sheeple. He called them the industrial animals that would take and come out to vote and then go back to being the animal that is easily shepherded and moved around within the society until it was time to re-elect those that were pulling their dancing strings. So it's very, very interesting when we look at that. But when
that is so interesting. I love it. I love it. I love your lessons. Your history lessons. They're so vivid and relevant.
Thank you. And when we come back in the next segment, I want to kind of combine your thought processes because I love the articles about the pandemic or dem panic, and then I smell a coronavirus rat, and shooting fish in the barrel. I mean, I look at that, and I look at how prolific Sam Adams was as an author and a writer as well, and all the different articles he did. And we're going to come back into those mirrors of history with Joan in segment number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this third segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they got it right. And I want to welcome back my Screaming Eagle friends at Soaring Eagle Radio, which is 101.1 FM down there in Lima, Ohio. Joining back again with all of those on Liberty Works Radio Network, where Liberty works for you. And the archives of all our programs can be found where? There it is, up over my left shoulder at SamuelAdamsReturns.net. And we're having just a great engaging time with Joan Swirsky, and this has been a lot of fun, Joan. And as we've been talking about,
for me, it's been a lot of fun. Oh, good, appreciate it.
Yeah. You know, we're gonna, as we talked about before. There's some other things I want to get back into with you in another time, and maybe later in the summer we can have you back on. That would be real fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. But as you're looking at here, I'm looking at these like 3 articles that just really jumped out at me, and I've been seeing even on Facebook where people are picking up the your title of the one that you did on March 21st, Pandemic or Dem Panic. I mean, they're actually making posters of that out there and placing them out there. And then I think you move into this. I smell a coronavirus rat, and with Cinco de Mayo coming up here in a few days, people looking at the corona, I think they're trying to figure out, okay, do we go with the virus or do we go with the beer? And because the way that people can't get out and do fishing out in the lakes and the rivers, I think they're trying to look at their goldfish in a barrel and start shooting at them. But those are 3 titles, but yet they all tie together. So
yeah,
how give us a little how you put all that together.
Well, it all goes back. The bottom line is that when Donald Trump came down the escalator on June 15th in 2015, it was at a point in his life, after being 50 years in business, wildly successful on television with The Apprentice, that all the people you're seeing now in a frenzy, in a state of complete hysterics, tearing out their hair, trying everything to depose him and sabotage him and remove him from office, are the same people, the same Democrats who lionized him, who felt privileged to interview him, and who had both hands out for his generous donation before he announced for the presidency. And the reason why he is such a threat, and the thread that ties everything I write together, that connects them all, is that what he has done is pose a true existential threat to the entire system. And when I say existential, I mean something that literally threatens the life and blood of the system as it's always existed. The system of the deep state, of payoff, of under-the-table deals, of backroom deals, of bartering, of privilege, of things like, for instance, just taking Joe Biden, who I believe is clinically diminished.
Yes.
And I did write an article about it. I think his wife should be indicted.
Yes.
I mean, what she's doing is criminal, that she's allowing this man who's clearly in some stage of dementia to continue this race. But when you think about the deep systemic corruption he's been involved in for 40 years in office, the latest being this whole thing with his son getting $150 billion from Ukraine and more from China, based solely on his affiliation with his father. And that's the very, very, very tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
And you see the collusion of the extremely corrupt media in covering it up, and even with this whole Me Too thing, not even asking them a question.
Right.
We can talk at another time about that Me Too movement, which I think has a lot of bogus elements to it. I don't buy most of it.
Correct.
But anyway, this whole thing that ties all my writings together is trying to explain the depth of the threat that Donald Trump poses to the Republicans in name only, to the Democrats on every level, even the moderate Democrats, because everything they believe in, everything they fought for, everything they taught their children, everything they donated money to, everything that characterizes their identities, the bedrock identities of these people, he has repudiated.
Yes.
And he hasn't just repudiated verbally, he's effectively repudiated. He doesn't belong to the World Trade Center. He's not a globalist. He doesn't take any more guff from NATO. He's not paying their fair share. He doesn't believe in NAFTA and these horrific deals that former presidents have made with people, all to the detriment of America.
Correct.
Including, and my husband's a businessman, my father was a businessman, my grandfather was a businessman, including basically trying to destroy the capitalist system and the business system by farming out everything we manufacture. And now we're seeing it with the medicines that they manufacture in China that we can't get, with all the things just for the cheap labor that we farmed out. And now Trump is bringing back the manufacturing to America. The closed borders. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I ask my liberal friends, do you have a lock on your door?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have an alarm system? Yes. Do you have a lock on your window? Yes. Well, I suggest that you get rid of the alarm system and take the locks off your doors and windows. Are you crazy? Well, that's what you're asking America to do.
Right. Yeah.
You're asking them to open it so anybody can come in with disease, with criminality, just a carte blanche.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get back to every single thing I write about, right down to this coronavirus epidemic. I mean, say pandemic. So somebody flies from another country and they give a germ and you get a germ, and it's a flu and you get over it. That's why the curve was flat so quickly. But everything goes back to the frenzy. You can say, oh, they hate Donald Trump so much. It goes so far beyond hatred. Yeah. It's a frenzy they're in because he's unmasking their corruption. And I predict that this Bill Barr, and this, I forgot, Durham,
yes.
They are going to come down with indictments probably that go right up to Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Or I should go up. Because when you convert our intelligence systems, our justice system, our homeland security system, our State Department, when you convert our entire federal government into a political operation that is criminal, really, treasonous, really, in the literal meaning of the word, you deserve to go to Gitmo. That's my step. Gitmo.
Well, it's interesting with that is that, once again, there's a number of the anti-federalist papers that were looking at it, and as the anti-federalists were writing, they were expressing that same thing, that these things could happen if we did not have that moral and virtuous society and moral and virtuous leaders. Then what we would see is that the very elements of the government, those things are the different, and we didn't, at that time, obviously, the founders didn't have all the different agencies that we have, but they saw that with what was there, the potentials to take and corrupt them against the people and the general population and utilize them within the context of political skullduggery, it's all, human nature in itself has that, as you well know. But one other quick point before we jump into a little bit more, especially on the shooting the fish in the barrel and the rat. But what was interesting is that people don't recognize that we fought the revolution because of outsourcing. That was one of the key elements that happened, is that all our raw product was being shipped overseas back to England for manufacturing there, and then brought back to us, and we were paying double taxation and higher rates on it, where we were looking at cheap labor in China and India, and even importing the human resources into America in our present time that devaluate everything else here. And I think, to your point, not think, but I know that that's what Donald Trump, understanding those people, having everything that you talk about in shooting, fish in a barrel, is that he knows these folks because he's been with them. And he's taking and he's pulling off their happy smiles and fine feathers.
Absolutely. Let me remind you, when you're a business mogul, a billionaire in New York City, as long as he has dealt with the most powerful, arch, difficult union leaders, and the mob.
Oh, yeah.
These politicians are small potatoes to him. He must laugh himself when he goes into a private room.
Yeah.
I mean, with their posturing, and he's got their number. Right. And now Barr has his number, and Durham, I think his name has his number, their number, and I think indictments are coming down, and they should. Yeah. Just like they did in the Watergate thing, except Watergate looks like child's play in comparison to what these people have done for the past 4 years to subvert our democracy and our republic.
Yes.
Really. That's what they've done.
Oh, absolutely.
It's criminal.
Yes. Yeah.
But I wanted just to say one thing, Tom, before you have to go. I read something the other day that was so amazing. I read it out loud to my husband, and he knew it because he's a history buff. But our founding fathers, everybody says how the genius of them and the foresight of them and their erudition, and how could they have done everything, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all these magnificent documents and towering thoughts. And I read their ages. They were 20. They were 21. They were 23. They were 27.
Yes.
I mean, think of young people today schooled in liberal schools and these towering, epic founders. It's a feature.
Yes. So that's why I always enjoy when I appear in character as Sam Adams and interact with a lot of young folks, especially young teenagers. I ask them what their ages are, and they get 12, 13, some say 14, and say, "Oh, you're ready to go to Harvard." And they look at me cross-eyed. "What are you talking about? I'm 14 years old. I'm in, 6th or 7th grade or whatever like that." I said, "Well, Sam Adams, I went to Harvard at 14. I read and I was able to read and write 4 different languages. And when I went to Harvard at 14, my first coursework was being given a Greek portion, not just a chapter, but a Greek portion of either a letter or gospel in the Bible, and I had to translate it into English. Or I was given in the Hebrew a portion, a book out of the Old Testament that I had to translate into English. That was their first lessons. And you get these kids looking at you cross-eyed. So, the old timers of the day were, Sam Adams, Ben Franklin, and all of that. But, to your point, now people think we have these great intellects, but in reality, we've sure taken a step back.
That's partly
last 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I would say that's partly one of the blights of liberalism, to introduce not just socialized medicine, but socialized education through Common Core, which eliminates American history and cursive writing and anything resembling the true educated person. So it's another blight.
Yes, absolutely.
Of
Well, Joan, it's been a real delight having you on the program, and as I indicated, would love to have you back late summer sometime. You and I will stay in contact about that. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find Joan's website in the links below. And come on back next week when Sam Adams returns and the Anti-Federalists, they got it right.